In the bustling halls of government secondary school Enugu, young Stanley Okonkwo stood out among his peers. His quick wit and sharp intellect made him the pride of his teachers and the envy of his classmates. As the only child of Matthew and Mary Okonkwo, Stanley carried the weight of his family's hopes and dreams on his shoulders, but he bore this burden with grace and determination. The defining moment of Stanley's academic career came during his final year when the Nigerian Ministry of Education announced a nationwide debate competition. The grand prize, a full scholarship to study law at the prestigious University of Oxford. Stanley's preparation was meticulous. Night after night, he pored over books in his father's small study, the dim light of a kerosene lamp illuminating his determined face. The debate topic was globalization, a bridge or barrier for developing nations. Stanley's passionate argument, drawing from both his traditional Igbo wisdom and his modern outlook, captivated the judges. When his name was announced as the winner, the entire school erupted in celebration. His parents' joy knew no bounds. Their son was going to study in the United Kingdom. Oxford's ancient spires and hallowed halls were a far cry from the red earth and palm trees of his hometown. Yet Stanley adapted quickly, his natural intelligence and charm helping him navigate this new world. His dedication to his studies never wavered, and he graduated at the top of his class, earning a good position at Blackwood and Hamilton, one of London's most prestigious law firms, which employed him upon his graduation from law school. It was at a charity gala organized by his firm that Stanley first met Sandra Worthington. She stood out in the crowd, not just for her striking beauty but for her genuine interest in his stories about Nigeria. Sandra, born into old money and educated at the finest schools, found herself drawn to Stanley's warmth and the rich cultural heritage he represented. Their courtship was swift and intense. Sandra was fascinated by Stanley's tales of his homeland, the festivals, the traditions, the sense of community. She loved how his eyes lit up when he spoke of his village, though she struggled to pronounce its name. Stanley, in turn, was captivated by Sandra's open-mindedness and her desire to learn about his culture, even if her understanding was sometimes naive. When Stanley proposed after just 6 months of dating, Sandra's family reacted with poorly concealed dismay. Her father, Sir Richard Worthington, a banking executive with a lineage traced back to Victorian times, attempted to disguise his prejudice with practical concerns. "My dear," he said during a tense family dinner, "how can you possibly build a life with someone whose language you don't speak? Whose customs you don't understand? Have you even tried Nigerian food?" Sandra's mother, Lady Elizabeth, was more direct. "Really, darling, there are plenty of suitable young men from good British families. Why complicate your life unnecessarily?" But Sandra stood firm. "Love transcends all barriers," she declared, her chin raised in defiance. "Stanley and I will build our own bridge between our cultures." Their wedding was a small affair in a historic London church, far from the elaborate society wedding Lady Elizabeth had always envisioned for her daughter. The few guests who attended witnessed a ceremony that seemed to symbolize the possibility of love bridging cultural divides. Yet beneath the surface, tensions simmered. When Stanley announced the planned trip to Nigeria 2 months after the wedding, Sandra was thrilled. She packed her expensive camera equipment, envisioning herself documenting their journey like a National Geographic photographer. Her Instagram followers would love it, she thought. The reality of village life in Nigeria hit Sandra like a physical blow. The lack of consistent electricity, the absence of running water, the communal living arrangements, all challenged her preconceptions of what married life would be like. Yet it was the cultural expectations that proved most challenging. The incident with Stanley's father set the tone. When Sandra extended her hand in greeting, Mr. Matthew's horrified cry of "abomination" echoed through the compound. Stanley had failed to prepare her for the intricate protocols of greeting elders in Igbo culture, where a woman was expected to kneel or curtsy. The morning duties expected of a new wife became a daily ordeal. The local women watched with disapproval as Sandra struggled with the traditional broom, her unpracticed hands unable to manage the unfamiliar tool. The sound of her tears echoed through the compound as she fell, unused to the physical demands of the work. The kitchen became another battlefield. Sandra's attempts to use the mortar and pestle for pounding yam ended in frustration and near injury. The smoke from the firewood kitchen made her eyes water and her throat burn. Her mother-in-law's attempts to teach her traditional cooking methods were met with increasing despair. How can she be a proper wife if she cannot prepare proper food? The village women whispered among themselves. How will she take care of our son? During the masquerade festival, Mr. Stanley warned Sandra never to come out to watch the masquerade. Sandra, seeing the masquerade, was so astonished. She has never witnessed anything like that before. She came out of the house and went close to the masquerade to take a clearer picture of it. The masquerade supporters shouted, "Abomination, abomination, abomination." There has never been a time a woman came close to see a masquerade in the history of their village. No one is allowed to take a picture of the masquerade. The masquerade supporters took her and detained her in their local wooden cell. When Mr. Stanley heard of it, he rushed to the cell and begged for her release. He was informed that his wife committed a great sacrilege. Stanley bought cow, cock and other local items to perform sacrifice to appease the masquerade. Sandra was released and the pictures she took were deleted. Sandra started going round the village taking pictures of trees, forest and the natural life. One day she stumbled upon a shrine decorated with fetish objects. She was shocked as she has never seen anything like that before. She started to video the shrine and take pictures, an act that is against the belief of the village. The shrine is a sacred place that no one is ever allowed in, only the chief priest. Sandra desecrated the shrine and took most of the objects and carved images. She thought to herself, these objects will fetch a fair price at London Museum. While walking home with the carved images from the shrine, a strange spirit appeared to her. "How dare you desecrate the sacred shrine of our village?" The spirit yelled at her. Sandra couldn't believe her eyes. She threw away the bags and camera in fear and ran away. She ran and got tired. She sat panting under a tree in fear, breathing heavily. The spirit appeared again. "You must pay for what you have done. You must pay, you must pay," the spirit roared. Sandra flew again and ran towards the airport. She boarded a taxi heading to the airport. She booked an emergency flight and went back to London. The village, when they learnt of her action, was so furious. Stanley went to the chief priest and begged for her to be forgiven, but the apology was rejected. The whole village suffered from punishment of the gods. Their only local stream turned to blood. Finally, the chief priest instructed that Stanley must get some items to appease the gods. Alligator pepper, crocodile egg, pregnant pigeon among other weird items requested to use in the sacrifice to cleanse the village. The ritual took place for 3 days, and after the ritual, the village stream became white again, all plagues gone. After few days, Stanley got a message from Sandra reading, "I'm back to United Kingdom. Your people wanted to kill me because I'm British. If you want the marriage to continue, please come back to United Kingdom." Stanley tried to explain that no one wanted to kill her. Stanley told her that anyone who committed those abominations will be punished. He told her that those were the customs and traditions of his people. He told Sandra on the call that her punishment was less because she is not an indigent. She was informed that her life was spared because she did them unaware, and any indigent who does that will die. Few days after the cleansing, Stanley traveled back to United Kingdom to stay with his lovely wife. Sandra vowed never to come to Nigeria again. Years later, Stanley and Sandra would build a life together in London, but always with the shadow of the Nigerian experience between them. They raised their children with stories from both cultures, though Sandra's versions of their time in Nigeria grew more diplomatic with the years. Stanley maintained connections with his village through regular calls and generous financial support, especially during festivals and ceremonies. Their story became a quiet legend in both worlds, in London's expatriate Nigerian community and in Stanley's village. Some saw it as a cautionary tale about the limits of cross-cultural romance, while others viewed it as a testament to love's ability to survive even the most profound differences. The truth, as always, lay somewhere in between. Their marriage survived not because they overcame the cultural differences, but because they learned to respect them. Sandra came to accept that there were aspects of Stanley's world she would never fully understand or embrace, while Stanley learned to balance his roles as a modern London lawyer and the son of a traditional Igbo family. Their experience highlighted an essential truth, that love, while powerful, must be built on a foundation of mutual understanding and respect. It's not enough to simply declare that love transcends all barriers. One must also be willing to acknowledge and honor those barriers where they exist. In the end, Stanley and Sandra's story was not just about the clash between tradition and modernity, or between African and European worldviews. It was about the complex nature of human relationships, the importance of cultural sensitivity, and the delicate balance between preserving tradition and embracing change. The village elders often said that the gods had shown mercy to Sandra because she was an outsider who acted in ignorance. But perhaps the true mercy was in giving both Stanley and Sandra the wisdom to understand that successful relationships require more than just love. They require patience, understanding, and the humility to accept that some differences will always remain. Years later, when their children asked about Nigeria, Sandra would show them carefully selected photographs from her brief time there, beautiful landscapes, friendly faces, colorful markets. The pictures of the masquerade and the shrine remained forever deleted, a small price to pay for peace between worlds. Stanley, in turn, taught their children about their Igbo heritage in ways that Sandra could accept and understand. They learned to respect both worlds. Their mother's England with its ordered gardens and ancient universities, and their father's Nigeria with its rich traditions and vibrant ceremonies. And sometimes, on quiet evenings in their London home, when Stanley would tell stories of his village, Sandra would listen with a new appreciation. She had learned that there are some things that cannot be captured by a camera or understood through Western eyes. Some things must simply be respected, even if they remain forever mysterious. Their love had survived not because it had conquered all barriers, but because they had learned to navigate them with grace and understanding. In the end, that was perhaps the greatest lesson of their story, that true love doesn't always mean perfect understanding, but rather the wisdom to accept and respect our differences.